Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about a divisional chart that is so very important in Vedic astrology. It's called the Navamsha chart. And I'm sure if you've studied Vedic astrology long enough, you know what the Navamsha chart is. Because in India, they would never, ever analyze a birth chart without looking at the Navamsha chart. So they usually have them side by side, the birth chart and the Navamsha chart. Well, let me explain what the Navamsha chart is. Because the Navamsha chart is the 9th division. So what it is when you take a 30-degree sign and you divide it up into 9 portions, each one of those divisions, which would equate to 3 degrees 20 minutes, is a Navamsha. So each sign is divided into 9 portions, and each one of those portions is called a Navamsha. So if you take your birth chart and you take a planet that's within a 30-degree segment, whatever portion of that sign that's divided up into 9, whatever it falls in, that will be its Navamsha. So the way that it's calculated, not that computers don't figure all of this up for us anyway, but it starts with when you take a sign and you divide it up into these 9 portions, each 3 degrees 20 minutes, and you divide these up, the first 3 degrees 20 minutes will always start with the cardinal sign of that element. So if we're talking about the sign Scorpio, the very first Navamsha, 3 degrees 20 minutes, will be the cardinal water sign, because Scorpio is water. So therefore that first portion will be Cancer. So if you're looking at the sign of Taurus and you divide that 30-degree sign up of Taurus, which may be your 5th house, so these are contained within your chart in the houses. So let's say you're looking at your 5th house and you want to know what the first 3 degrees 20 minutes of the sign of Taurus is, of these 9 Navamshas. It would be the cardinal earth sign. So according to what element it is, it always starts with the cardinal sign. So that's Capricorn. And then the next 8 Navamshas that follow the first one will follow in the order of the natural zodiac. So the natural zodiac goes, if you start with, let's say we're dividing up the sign of Taurus, and the first 3 degrees 20 minutes is Capricorn, then the next sign that follows Capricorn will be the next Navamsha, which will be Aquarius. Then the next one will be Pisces, the next one will be Aries, the next one will be Taurus, the next one will be Gemini, and so on, so that you have each and every sign that's divided up into 9 portions. What's fascinating is if you take all of the Navamshas, which are divided 9 divisions, 12 signs, you come up with 108 Navamshas total. So that is the mysticism of the spiritual number of 108. There's 108 Navamshas in a chart. So what is this chart? Now that we know kind of how it's calculated, so that gives us kind of the mathematical reference, what does this tell us? The Navamsha chart actually is called the fruit of the tree, which represents that whatever is promised in the birth chart, and everything that's in the birth chart, which is actually called the Rashi chart, everything that's there, those potentials, those possibilities, that the Navamsha chart is called the fruit of the tree because it represents, will these possibilities bear fruit? What will be the outcome of our life? That's revealed in the Navamsha. How powerful is that? So many times when planets in the Navamsha are not placed in the birth chart are not placed too well, but they're placed really well in the Navamsha, then it means in the second part of life, you overcome what is in the birth chart to become that which is in the Navamsha. So many times they say the Navamsha is the second part of life. Now, so many people that just get into Vedic astrology in their 20s or 30s, they think, oh, I'm in the second part of life in my 30s. No, you're not. Let me just say, my Navamsha chart never made any sense to me till I reached my 40s. So you are in for a whole different experience once you get into the second part of life, which is definitely in your 40s, not in your 30s, okay? So that's, and I'll tell you this, my Navamsha chart could have been read as my birth chart as I got older. So that is, I never understood it before then. Until after then, I'm like, that's what it means. So looking at the Navamsha chart, here's another thing. The Navamsha chart, the ascendant, will change approximately every 12 minutes. Whereas when you're looking at a birth chart, the ascendant from beginning to end, from 0 degrees to the last degrees, 30 degrees, will last for 2 hours. So if your birth time is off by a little bit, your ascendant will probably still be right if it's somewhere in the middle of the sign. But your Navamsha could change very easily, because if it's at the last degrees, 1 minute can put it over the edge where you have a different ascendant in the Navamsha. So you pretty much do need an accurate birth time to be able to really use this chart. Now this chart, in parentheses in some programs, says spouse. It does predict marriage, and it does tell the experience in the second part of life concerning relationships and marriage. It is about that, but it's not only that, it's everything else in your life. Now, if you're not sure about a birth time, remember this, you can look at the signs in the Navamsha and they will be correct. Why? Because planets do not change their degrees the whole day. The only planet that moves pretty much more than a degree per day is the moon. So if you're unclear whether or not your time of birth is off by 30 minutes or so, you can use still the moon, because the moon moves 1 degree every 2.5 hours. So your moon will even be the same in the Navamsha as it is in the birth chart. So my point is, the signs that the planets are in your Navamsha are pretty much the same signs the whole day. So if you don't have a correct birth time, you can still look at where the planets go to their signs in the Navamsha, because planets either lose or pick up strength depending on what signs they're in the Navamsha chart. So I want to use a couple of examples just to give you an idea of how significant this is. Now, planets that are exalted or debilitated are powerhouses of information in a birth chart, because they will definitely tell you about people, whether or not they'll lose strength or pick up strength, or if these planets in their chart will produce their results, especially in their planetary cycles, the dashas. So if it's a strong planet, it's going to produce powerful results. And the strength of a planet is really kind of determined by the signs and the houses they're in, but specifically if they're debilitated or exalted. So in this example of explaining how powerful the Navamsha is, I want to use 3 sports stars, people, athletes that are off the charts, amazing in their sport. So the first chart that I'd like to show that will really drive home my point here is Michael Jordon. Most guys out there, I have 3 sons, and my husband will all agree that Michael Jordon is the top athlete ever, okay? So you may have a different opinion, but most people would agree with this. So let's put his chart, Michael Jordon, up there. And he is born February 17th, 1963, 10:20 a.m. in Brooklyn Heights, New York. And looking at his ascendant, He has Aries as his ascendant. But what is the planet that we look most of all when we're talking about sports? It's Mars. Mars rules blood. Mars rules muscle. It rules sports. So you would assume that somebody like Michael Jordon would have a powerful, powerful Mars, right? Look where his Mars is. He has Mars in Cancer. And not only that, it's with Rahu. But you know, there's been a lot of controversy whether or not when a planet is debilitated or exalted and it's retrograde, it can reverse that quality. So that could be the answer why. He has debilitated Mars. And it is with Rahu. Rahu could pick it up, magnify it, but it's still debilitated. It's in Cancer. It's a problem. This is the best athlete ever. But if this is true, you know, we can talk about whether or not the retrograde reverses it, whether or not Rahu expands it. But where does it go in the Navamsha? Now that's what I would look for in the case of any time I see a debilitated planet. I always see if it picks up or loses strength in the Navamsha. So placing Mars in the Navamsha, regardless of what the ascendant is, it goes to Scorpio, its own sign of rulership, making it extraordinarily strong. So there's a prime example of a planet and its placement in the Navamsha. So I want to show you another chart, another athlete that will be very surprising. And this is Serena Williams, the tennis star, born September 26, 1981. And the time I have is 8:28 p.m. in Saginaw, Michigan. Now, notice where her Mars is. Let's not talk about anything else, but she's got debilitated Mars as well. Remember, a debilitated planet is weak, and we're talking about Mars being the planet of sports, athletes. But where does that Mars go in the Navamsha? Now, I know she's got the similar thing. She's got Rahu with Mars. It's debilitated. But in her case, it's not retrograde. It is not retrograde. Okay, here's the answer. In the Navamsha. Let's pull up her Navamsha chart. Mars goes to its exaltation sign, Capricorn. So there's the answer in the Navamsha. So, and remember I said, you know, it's the second part of life. Well, really, it's going to depict this whole person's energy throughout life, but it totally really kicks in terms of the ending results. The potential of this person is seen in the Navamsha. Okay, so that's Serena Williams. One more. Wilt Chamberlain, another basketball star. And let's put his chart up. He was born August 21st, 1936 at 11:27 p.m. in Philadelphia. So looking at his chart, let's go right to Mars. Again, we have debilitated Mars in Cancer. But where does it go in the Navamsha? Just like before, just like Michael Jordon, Mars goes to Scorpio in the Navamsha. These are three prime examples of how you need to look at where planets are in the Navamsha, in the birth chart, especially if they're debilitated. Will they pick up strength in the Navamsha? Now, this also goes the other route. Whereas if you have a debilitated planet, an exalted planet in the birth chart, but it goes to its debilitation sign in the Navamsha, then that means the second part of life, the planet becomes debilitated, weakened. It's kind of like those people that make it big in high school, the football stars, the popular ones, and you go to a high school reunion and all of a sudden you go, what happened? and they might have had an exalted sun that went to its debilitation in the Navamsha. So it's like these reversals in life, and it really does involve whether a planet is debilitated or whether it is exalted. Those are major issues to look for. Now, one more thing, if a planet stays in the same sign in both the birth chart as the Navamsha, we call this Virgotama. So if a planet is even debilitated, let's say you got Mars in Cancer in the birth chart, but in the Navamsha it stays in Cancer, it still picks up enormous strength by being Virgotama, because it's like a planet's in its own sign when it stays in the same sign in the birth chart as in the Navamsha. So with that, this is a very important tool to use, and there's so much more to learn about the Navamsha chart in terms of even predictive techniques, because what I find is when you're in a dasha or a bhukti planet that's in a certain house in the Navamsha chart, it produces those effects. And especially, I'll give you just a little clue here, if you're in a planetary Mahadasha or Bhukti of a planet in the 7th house in the Navamsha, because the Navamsha is about marriage, that Dasha Bhukti could predict marriage based on its placement in the Navamsha chart. So there's all these variances of different things that you can use with these divisional charts. But one thing I want to stress here in this lesson, never look at a chart without comparing it with the Navamsha chart, the D9 chart. So with that, I'd like to close. If you would like more information on me, you can always go to my website, which is galacticcenter.org. And if you would like to further your studies, take this to the next level, to learn Vedic astrology, I have a university, which is University of Vedic Astrology.com. Thank you.